The white savior trope has permeated film since its inception. The white savior in its current form serves as an uplifting and noble white character that goes out of their way to save the minority character in a narrative. In this video, we will break down the white savior trope in films through three categories: man of the principle, the helpless child, and the minority used as a plot point. We focus on films that have received a high level of popularity and or critical acclaim, from box office smashes to best picture winners. By exposing the characteristics of the white savior trope, we will illustrate how the consequences of portraying white characters as heroes to minority characters becomes damaging to persons of color, even in its most subtle ways.
Let's begin with the man of the principle trope. The man of the principle trope features a white man who is committed to protecting and saving non-white individuals from racist white people. It's a trope that functions as perpetuating the idea of white men as the ones with the agency to save and protect non-white folks who are depicted as not having the agency to save themselves. As a result, this trope, even though it portrays non-racism as a heroic trait, still perpetuates racist hierarchies that situate white men as the ones with power and moral superiority and non-white individuals as people devoid of power. To explain the man of the principle trope, we will cover 4 recent films: Sound of Freedom, Hidden Figures, Django Unchained, and 12 Years a Slave. While Sound of Freedom is a classic example of this trope, the latter 3 movies feature the trope yet were also applauded at the time of their releases for being important steps in non-white representation. Sound of Freedom was released just last year and was a massive box office hit, making over $250 million worldwide on a budget of under $15 million. The film follows a white man of principle saving non-white people from sex trafficking in Colombia. The film is based on a true story, and by emphasizing its true story narrative, the film furthers this idea that white savior narratives are reality. The film focuses on the white savior character and his character development. We meet his wife, we see his motivations, the film follows his journey. This scene sees 2 white men discussing sex trafficking, and one challenges the protagonist Tim that he hasn't saved any children from sex trafficking. Tim responds that this is because these children are mostly outside the United States. From this scene onwards, Tim is dead set on saving as many child sex trafficking victims in other countries as possible. A noble mission, but this film does not develop its non-white characters at all. In the film, these non-white children function as plot devices present for the sole purpose of being saved by a white man who is trying to rid the world of the evil he sees primarily in other countries. The next film that we are covering that features this trope is Hidden Figures. On the surface, Hidden Figures doesn't seem like a prototypical white savior film. It follows 3 black women in NASA who become essential parts of the American space program, even in the face of discrimination. However, some of the women's agency in the film is removed from them and imbued in a white savior character, one that didn't even exist in reality. The purpose of this choice seems to show that the white people at NASA were not all racist, and that a few good ones did exist. However, this white savior's character serves to perpetuate the racist narrative that non-white individuals can't make change on their own and need non-racist white men to help them get what they want. The film Django Unchained was similarly acclaimed for being an empowering movie for non-white folks, yet also features a white savior character that frees the black protagonist Django from slavery. Christoph Waltz's character is used to unlock Django's full potential. Without the man of principle's role in freeing Django, Django would not be able to enact the rampage of revenge he rightfully embarks on. The narrative would have easily been just as, if not more, impactful if Django freed himself from his enslavers, but instead, a completely unnecessary principled white man character was introduced. A similar thing happens in Best Picture winner 12 Years a Slave. This film was called both essential and necessary on release, and even one of the most important films about the African American experience ever by white film critic Andrew Pulver. The film is based on the true story of Solomon Northup, who was abducted and sold into slavery. Northup is shown at the mercy of his white slave owners throughout the film, and the film refrains from showing scenes of black resistance to their slave owners, which was highlighted in the book the film was based on. A man played by Brad Pitt only appears in the last 10 minutes of the film, essentially for the sole purpose of freeing Northup from slavery. This begs the question, why does Hollywood seem to need to interject non-racist white men into non-white narratives? Hollywood seems to be more concerned about emphasizing that there exist principled, non-racist white people than giving non-white people agency in the stories about them.
The next trope is the helpless child trope. The helpless child trope typically features a non-white child character who is helped in some way by the white protagonist. The idea is that non-white characters are helpless until a white character gives help in some form. The non-white characters are often presented as either powerless or inferior in other ways. This often presents the white characters as more powerful, moral, educated, or capable in comparison with the minority characters. It is important to note the ways in which minority groups are presented within white savior films. 3 films that display the helpless child trope well are Isle of Dogs, Gran Torino, and Finding Forrester. In Isle of Dogs, it is the sole white character in the film, an international student named Tracy, that leads the movement to save the dogs in Nagasaki. In this scene, Tracy finds the assistant to the scientist who found the cure for the dog flu and attempts to force information out of her that leads to the finding of the remaining antidote. Because of this, without Tracy, the cure would not have been found and proven effective. This was a key step in the saving of the dogs. Tracy appears to be the one who enlightens and mobilizes the Japanese characters to take action. She leads the students' movement against the corrupt Mayor Kobayashi in a way that suggests that the students would not have otherwise. She is also often positioned front and center, intended to be the major focus amongst the other students, presenting her as more brave and capable than her fellow Japanese peers. In Gran Torino, the minority characters are often presented as uneducated and needlessly violent. In this film, the Asian and Asian American characters are presented as either powerless or callous and violent. It is also relevant to notice that the sole depiction of African American individuals in this film involves them as violent criminals. This film perpetuates harmful stereotypes, such as the violent black man and the helpless minority. However, the white protagonist, Walt, who is also often violent, is seen as benevolent and a protector. In the case of Finding Forrester, the African-American character Jamal is presented as uneducated or unintelligent until the white character, William Forrester's intervention. The main scene in which the white savior trope manifests in Finding Forrester is the scene where Forrester emerges from retirement to speak in Jamal's defense. Without Forrester's help, Jamal is implied to be helpless. This positions Forrester as benevolent savior and Jamal as powerless.
The third and final trope of the white savior complex revolves around the use of minority characters as plot devices for the development of white main characters. These films typically center on a white protagonist facing challenges in their life. As the story unfolds, the white protagonist encounters a minority character who assists them on their path to self-discovery and growth. However, instead of portraying the non-white characters as complex individuals with their own struggles, thoughts, and experiences, they are depicted as mere tools to facilitate the success and journey of the white main characters. Ultimately, the narrative culminates in the white character achieving personal growth and using the newfound development to save the non-white character either physically or emotionally. This trope is best exemplified in the 2019 Best Picture film, Green Book, which depicts the friendship between Don Shirley, a renowned black pianist, and his driver, Tony Lip, as they embark on a tour of the Deep South in the 1960s. At the start of the film, Tony is portrayed as a very racist man. He uses racial slurs against the black plumbers that come to work at his house, and even throws away the glasses that the plumbers use. After being hired by Don to be his driver, Tony gradually starts realizing his own faults and ignorance, and goes from being really racist to only kind of racist by the end of the movie. At the end of the film, Tony invites Don to his family Christmas party, and even chides his friends when they are making racial slurs about Don. Don's character helps Tony recognize his own racism and become a better person in various aspects of his life. In the film, we rarely see Don's story or his perspective, as the narrative is centered around Tony's character growth into a hero in Don's life. The producers, writers, and even the directors of Green Book were all white, with one of the producers and writers being Tony's son, Nick. It is clear to say how Green Book completely missed the mark on depicting the rich life and accomplishments of Don, and instead relayed a white man's depiction of a black man's life, in which they took away from Don's story and his accomplishments to make the hero out of the white man. A similar narrative is found in the French film Les Intouchables, famous for also being a film depicting the real-life friendship between Felipe, a wealthy quadriplegic who leads a miserable life distant from everyone, and his black caregiver and former felon, Driss. Driss does not treat Felipe with pity and adds excitement, fun, and joy to Felipe's life. Driss helps Felipe reconcile with his estranged adopted daughter and date the woman that he loves. Throughout the entire film, the purpose of Driss's character is to uplift Felipe, bringing him out of his depression and lighting him with the joys of life. However, the movie does not delve into Driss's character at all. We know little about Driss, and his character does not undergo any true development. Although the film is based on a true story, the narrative is entirely one-sided, with a spotlight on Felipe and Driss in the periphery. Lastly, the 2009 film Avatar is also a victim to the white savior trope. The story centers around paraplegic former Marine Jake Sully who is sent to the land of Pandora using an avatar of the indigenous Na'vi people. During one of his initial missions as a spy on Pandora, Jake is saved by the Na'vi princess Neytiri, and they slowly fall in love, changing his perceptions of the Na'vi. Jake establishes a relationship with the Na'vi deity Ewa and helps the Na'vi defeat the human forces. The narrative is focused on Jake's journey of self-discovery and personal growth through his interactions with the Na'vi. While the Na'vi characters, particularly Neytiri, play pivotal roles in guiding Jake and helping him understand their culture, they're often depicted as supporting characters whose primary purpose is to facilitate Jake's development as a hero of the story. Furthermore, several Na'vi lives are lost to Jake and his hero arc. After Jake becomes changed by the Na'vi and is able to realize the wrongs of the humans, he is depicted as the white savior of the Na'vi people, whereas the Na'vi characters are presented as simplistic and lacking agency, with their struggles and experiences serving as a background element to enhance Jake's narrative arc and heroic journey. In the 3 films discussed for this trope, we see the non-white characters give up time, physical and emotional resources, and even their lives to aid the journey of the white main character. As movies help instruct our perceptions of the world and our interactions with others, this trope perpetuates harmful stereotypes regarding social and racial dynamics.
From Green Book to Isle of Dogs, these films serve as a catalyst for understanding the white savior narrative Hollywood has preached since its inception. By shedding light on the white savior trope, audiences become conscious of how supposed empowerment can turn into a form of degradation against persons of color while supporting ideals of white superiority. The white savior narrative has yet to cease, but the representation of persons of color is increasing and beginning to break down the racial barriers the white savior narrative has constructed in cinema. Recent successful films like Get Out, The Harder They Fall, and Black Panther reject the white savior trope and epitomize how increasing representation of non-white voices behind the camera has led to non-white stories being told without the need for a white savior.